for the Good morning. I'm April O'Leary, the founder of O'Leary Publishing, and this is our webinar, our first of our webinars called How to Write and Publish a Book. Heather and I kind of got the idea together after our Book Naples event because we had so many amazing conversations with aspiring authors at our table before the event who were asking a lot of great questions. And sometimes the one-to-one conversations, it's hard to answer everybody's questions at one time. And so we thought, what better way to kind of follow up after our Book Naples event than to offer this sort of complimentary free talk so that we can give you the information that you might need about how to write and publish a book. Heather's going to cover how to write a book with all of her expertise as a developmental editor. She has worked with almost 50 authors so far over the last 6 years, helping them to go from idea to published book as far as how to get that idea really crystallized, understanding your audience and such. And she's going to give you her 7-step process here of Manuscript Magic. You should have received a copy of that in your email, which is free for download. And that's going to be the first 20 to 25 minutes. And then we're going to switch gears to talk about publishing a book and independent publishing versus traditional publishing, and where you might fit in the landscape of publishing if you decide to publish your book and how that would look. So we hope this will be informative. We had gotten some questions submitted from those of you who answered the question on the Google form when you signed up, saying to give us your questions. So hopefully we'll be able to cover those. And if there's any additional time, we will take some questions live. We do expect this to be about 1 hour, so we will get started. And I introduce Heather Desrocher, who has been with me since almost the very beginning. She is the right-hand girl here. She runs our editorial team. She's an exceptional developmental editor, which means she helps you develop your ideas and your manuscript into something people will actually want to read, which is not an easy task. And I trust her implicitly with all of that work. And I'm very lucky to have her here. So welcome, Heather.
Thank you so much, April. It's so wonderful to see each of you here today. We're super excited to share this with you as an extension of kind of what we did at Booked Naples to dive in a little bit more. So whether you've already written something or you've written nothing, you just have an idea, wherever you are in the process, this is for you, because likely you need a little bit of support. It would be helpful to have someone who can give you a little bit more tools, a few more information. So that's usually what stops us in the writing process, is there's some information or some tool that we don't have. So we're hoping today to give you a few more of those. That's really kind of what we specialize in doing. And over the last 5.5 years, April and I have worked with 40 authors on over 50 books. And we've really refined this process that seems to work for almost everyone. And I'm going to share that with you just kind of in briefly today. This whole thing is in Manuscript Magic, this little booklet here that you have access to. And I hope you'll read it. It should be real easy. It's about like half an hour to read it. But then doing it is what takes a little bit more. So we're going to talk about that today. So I'm just going to start with, we've developed the 7 steps, a process of 7 steps, simple steps. They really are. And I'm just going to tell you what they each are, and then we'll dive into each one a little bit more. So I'm just going to kind of give you that overview so you know where we're going. And this is basically just what I'm going to share right now is the table of contents of the book, right? There's 7 steps. That's the 7 little chapters that are in this book. I was playing with it last night, trying to make an acronym, and I came up with MOVERFIT. That's what it is. April's never heard that before. MOVERFIT. That's what it is. So I'm going to tell you what MOVERFIT is. So first thing is the message of your book. That's step 1, coming up with that message. We'll talk about that. The second step is just identifying what the obstacles are that have stopped you or can continue to stop you from writing. We all have them. April has them. I have them. We all have them. The third thing is clarifying what your vision is for your book once it's out in the world. The fourth step is imagining your reader, your audience, who is picking up your book, who is reading them, how are you helping them? The fifth step is to build the frame, the table of contents basically for the book, kind of the structure of the book. Step 6 is to create the invitation into the book, which is the back cover description that invites people in to read your book. And then the 7th step is finding a team who can help you do that, because we all need a team. I even needed a team when I wrote this little booklet. So those are kind of the 7 overview steps, and we're going to dive into each of those as we go. And so I want you to be thinking about you may have multiple books, you know, in your kind of like what you want to do. We most of us do. April's written quite a few books. I've written one. I have 3 more in the works. But pick one of them, whichever one feels most pressing, and kind of go through these steps with me on that so that when we're done today, you have a more clear idea of where you're going to go with this. So step 1, your message. The way that you come up with your message is to really identify what are the experiences you had in your life? What is the wisdom that you've gained that could help other people, right? So think about that. We each have unique experiences and wisdom and hardships we've gone through. And that is where the really good stuff is for the message of your book. So I just want to give you a couple seconds to kind of think about what that is for you and what that message might be. And then I'm going to give you an example so that you can kind of see what a message looks like. So I'm going to use the message of Manuscript Magic, which is right here. And let me just go to the next slide. Let's see if there we go. So step 1, we're defining the message. So the message for Manuscript Magic is this. It's really simple, 1 sentence. There is a magical 7-step process that you can use to create your manuscript. So everything in Manuscript Magic goes back to that. And that's what you want in your book, is what is your simple message that every word in the book is going to go back to. So I'm just going to give you a minute to kind of sit with that. And obviously this is a much deeper process, but this is just giving you the overview. So once you've defined your message, then you're probably inspired to write. You're ready to put some more things down. But before you dive in, it's really important to identify what are the things that have stopped you and that can continue to stop you. So what are the obstacles? You really need to identify them, make a list of them, and figure out how you're going to overcome them. For most people, the biggest obstacle is just not knowing what to do, what steps to take, where to go. And that's where a team like O'Leary Publishing comes in. We have editors, we have designers, we have project managers, we have all the people that you would need to do this. We don't have to be the ones you work with. It could be, you know, whatever works best for you, but identifying those obstacles, definitely having people to support you is really helpful. April was able to do almost all her books pretty much on her own, but she did have people that helped her. So even someone who's excellent at it still needs a team. So figuring out who your team is important. Some of the other obstacles obviously are time and discipline and self-doubt, you know, wondering if you have something to say. And that is where it's really helpful to have people maybe who've done it before, or friends that are authors, other people who have the experience or who have gone further down the path of publishing a book or writing a book. So it's really helpful to have those people. And so you make that list. Here's the things that have stopped me. Here's the things I think could stop me. And here's how I'm going to address each of them, because they will come up. And then when they do, you can go look at them and see. So that's step 2, identifying the obstacles. So you have your message, you've identified your obstacles. Now what you want to do before you actually start writing is you want to have the answer to the why you're writing this book. Our why in life is so important in anything we do. So why do you want to write this book? What is it going to do for you in your life, in your career or profession? And what's it going to do with other people, for other people? Some of the answers to that, to just give you a few, and in Manuscript Magic, there's examples of each of these, lots, so that it will be a great model for you. So for many people, it's you want to grow your brand. You want to expand your influence beyond the local area. You want to have it as a gift for clients or a tool for clients. You want to help others. So you really want to clarify when you're holding your book, it's all done, it's in your hand, it's on Amazon, it's in Barnes and Noble, wherever it is, what is it doing for you and for the world? And when you have that vision, it really helps you to keep pushing through when you get stuck. So you have your message, you've identified your obstacles, you've started to clarify your vision, and each of these may change a little bit as you write. But one of the things that's really important is as you're writing to keep those. So in every manuscript we have, the first thing that we see every time I open it, every time the author opens it, any editors that go onto it, our project manager, April, anyone that goes onto the manuscript, the first thing they see in that manuscript is what's the message, what's the vision, and then the next one, step 4, is who's the reader. Because everything we are doing in terms of our design and our writing and editing, everything needs to go back to that right there. What is our kind of our bullseye for this book? So step 4 is, who is your reader?
You need to advance your slides, I think.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, step 3, clarify the vision. I'm so excited here on this. Thank you, April. That's why we're a team. We have to help each other. So step 3 is clarify the vision. Here we are, step 4, imagine the reader. So who is your reader? What does his or her life look like? And most importantly, what is a problem that your reader has that you're going to solve? For example, in Manuscript Magic, the problem that my reader has is they don't quite know what the process is. They're stuck in writing. I'm going to solve that by showing them exactly what to do. So how does your book solve your reader's problem? So really who the reader is, what their problem is, and how you solve it. That's kind of imagining the reader for step 4. And I just want to share kind of the answer to those 3 little questions for another one of our books. It was actually a fiction book because some of you may be writing fiction. We specialize in nonfiction, but you may be writing fiction, and it still applies to that. So we have a series of books called Poppy the Awesome Possum by Julie Le Breton. And her first book, Poppy the Awesome Possum and the Book of Runes, this was her answer to who the reader is and what the problem is and how she's going to solve it. This book is for a child who wants to be entertained and learn about magic. It takes the reader on a magical journey of adventure and exploration. It uses a story to teach children about meditation and the runes. So if you're writing a novel, you can think about what is that you're going to do for your reader, and you can clarify it that way. All right, so you have your message, you've identified your obstacles, you've clarified what your vision is for the book, and you know who your reader is. Now you're ready to kind of start diving in a little bit more. So step 5 is going to be to build the frame for all the words, for the whole book. So it's kind of like if you're building a house, you have to put the frame up before you can do anything else. And the table of contents is the frame for your book. So when you start to think about the table of contents or the frame for your book, you want to think about what are the topics that I want to share or talk about? Are they grouped in certain areas? Right? So for one of the books that we had was solving spiritual skepticism and recovery. And so it was all about recovery from addiction. And he had 2 parts. He had how addiction works and how recovery works. And then within each, he had about 10 chapters. So you want to think about that. How many parts do you want for your book? Maybe it's 4 parts, maybe it's 6 parts. We just did a book on amicable divorce, and it had 17 parts, each with 3 chapters. And the parts were questions that people who are going through divorce might have. So there's all different ways to do it. And in Manuscript Magic, we share about 10 different tables of contents. They can look all different ways. So pick up some of your favorite books, look at the table of contents, and see what works for you and what you think might work in your book. And this is a really important step because it's going to guide everything that you do. And one of the things that I suggest is if you're not working with a team, have someone who you trust, a friend who knows you or who's in your business, look at your table of contents and see, does it make sense to them? Do they want to read this book? And one thing about the table of contents, when you first build it, it's probably going to be boring titles, like topics, like so you can organize your thoughts. And then as you write, you will change those chapter titles into something more exciting. It doesn't need to be exciting right from the start. In the beginning, it really just needs to have the topics. Like one of the authors I'm working with right now is a real estate agent. We're going through all these different parts of what makes a successful real estate agent. And right now our chapter titles are just descriptive. So we know all the information. And he keeps saying, but this is so boring. I said, yeah, it is now, but it won't be later. But this is part of the process, right? So make your list of all the things, and then eventually you'll come up with cute titles. One of my favorite chapter titles, I think it'll probably be my favorite chapter title forever. I mentioned this when Paul Arciero spoke at Book to Naples 2 years ago. He's a research scientist, and he's all about nutrition and exercise and protein pacing, and has done lots of research. He works with athletes, and we had some fun chapter titles. But my very favorite one that I always talk about still, April knows what I'm going to say. My favorite chapter title we came up with was Slow, Whole, and Dirty. And of course, you want to read that chapter, right? But it's about eating slow food, whole food, and food that was grown in the dirt, right? So it's not what you first think when you hear it, but it catches your attention. So those are some of the fun things you can do with your table of contents as you move through writing your book. All right, so you have your message. You've identified your obstacles. You have that vision of what it looks like. You know who your reader is. And now you've started to build the structure for all the words that you're going to write. And the table of contents will change and adjust. It's dynamic, it's flexible, but at least you have a framework to get you started. And then you can set up your manuscript. Here are my 10 chapters, and here are my 4 parts. Here they are. And you can start dropping things in as you go. So that was step 5. So for step 6, what you're going to do is you're going to create the invitation into your book. And that's really important. You can have the best book in the world, but if it doesn't invite people into it, then no one's going to read it. And so what the invitation is it's the back cover description. And it's not a summary of the book. Its job is to kind of pique the reader's interest. And so what we like to do in the back cover of a book is we like to start with either a question or a statement at the very top, kind of bold. And one of my favorite ones, we had a book called Ascend to Joy, and it was all about the universal Kabbalah journey. And on the very top of it, in the back, it said, "Are you ready to experience more joy than you ever thought possible?" Well, who doesn't want to say yes to that, right? And that catches your attention because, well, yeah, I want that. And how do I get that, right? So think about that, about what question or statement you could have that really kind of captures their attention. And then what you're going to do is you're going to describe what the book does for your reader. So again, you've already identified who that reader is. So you're speaking to that person, remembering what maybe their problem is or challenge they have and how you're going to solve it. And you're going to explain exactly how you're going to do that on the back cover copy. So you're inviting them in and you're leaving them wanting more. And one of the best things you can do is, again, pick up some of your favorite books, read the description, go on Amazon, read the descriptions of books, and find the ones that really make you want to read them, especially ones that maybe are similar to what you're writing, if it's in a similar field or genre. And again, in Manuscript Magic, please read through that because we give you examples from real books of good back cover copies. Now, we kind of use a little bit of a formula, and you can do it however you want, but what we have found that works really well is to start with that question or statement, to have about 2 paragraphs, right? And somewhere in there to use the book title once or twice. And to keep it simple and short, you don't want it to be too long. You just want to give them enough to make them interested. And then that back cover copy is a guide for you as you write your book. So, periodically, say once a week, you go back, you read it. Am I doing what I said I wanted to do? Am I doing this for the reader? And that really guides you as you're writing. So that's step 6, to create that invitation into the book. And a lot of times what you'll find then is you'll use some of that in the introduction or preface of the book, or maybe what you've written for the introduction or preface of your book will be pulled out and put on the back cover copy. Like there's kind of a correlation there with some of that, is one of the things that we find. So that's step 6. So then step 7 is to find the team that can help you do that. And there's lots of different ways to do that. We are a concierge publishing team. We would love to work with you. We work with authors all around the world. We have everyone on the team that's needed, multiple editors and designers, and we can go from beginning to end, from your idea all the way till it's in your hands. And if you live someplace else and you want to try and find someone local, you can Google, book publishers. Please feel free to do that. April's going to talk a little bit more about kind of the publishing process and the different ways and what that looks like. And it's very, very important that you have a good editor. Now, we generally, each author works with 3 editors. They work with a developmental editor, a line editor, and a proofreader. So we have 3 editors on most books. And that can be really valuable to have those separate sets of eyes, different perspectives. So have a good editor, but you might even get a second editor, is kind of, and I'm just talking mostly kind of about the writing of the book part, and April will talk about the other parts. So just kind of reviewing again, my new acronym, MOVERFIT: message, obstacles, vision, reader, frame, invitation, and team. So those are kind of the 7 steps. And I invite you to read Manuscript Magic if you haven't, or read it again, and schedule a consult with April or with myself to find out what's next and where you'd like to go. So, and April will talk a little bit more about that, but we do publishing consults and editorial consults. But what we really love to do is we love to start with either a manuscript review, if you've already written your manuscript, where I read the whole manuscript and I come up with a kind of, here's what's working, here's what's not working, here's my ideas, and then we have a Zoom to kind of go over all that, and authors find that very helpful. Most of the time people think they're done, and then they're not done. And then once I have the Zoom with them, they're like, oh, I see why I'm not done. I see what I can do. And I give them kind of the vision of what they could do. And if you haven't written it, we do a book mapping where we Zoom for an hour and a half and we do this whole process in detail with your book, and so that you have a book map at the end of it. So I would love to work with any of you on either one of those if you are ready for that. So that's mostly what I have for my part. April, I don't know if you want me to do anything more, if we want to do questions or save them till the end.
Well, I would say if you could just briefly distinguish the three different types of editorial and what they do,
Absolutely.
why that is important.
Super. I would love to do that. So this was something that we kind of discovered as we worked on books, this process. So as a developmental editor, and that's mostly what I do is the developmental editing, and a few of our other editors also can work as developmental editors as we're growing, which is great. So the developmental editing is really coming up with that book map, clarifying all these things, your message, your reader, your vision, your table of contents, your back cover copy. And then I am there with you as you're writing, as much as you need me or as little as you need me. So maybe we have a weekly check-in, or maybe, we even have a daily check-in on the manuscript. We work in Google Docs on the manuscript. So you can be working on it, I can be working on it at the same time. And I'm reading what you're doing. You can ask me questions on it. I can answer them. And, the other way around, I might leave notes. So really what it's doing is it's having a developmental editor is someone who knows what books look like and how they work and what can work and what doesn't work and what pitfalls are, and is just there kind of holding your hand along the way of the writing. And we find that it makes it a much more efficient. Like, we much prefer someone to come to us with an idea and we help you write the book, because if you've already written the book, there's going to be there's a little more work to be done. We can still do it, we still love it, but it's great if you have the idea, because then a developmental editor really can help you and guide you and save you a lot of time, effort, energy along the way while you're doing it. And that process, can be a couple months. And there's some, authors that I've worked with, for up to a year, just depending on what their book is. Obviously, we like to keep it, to a few months, but whatever it takes. Some books take longer, some books are longer, some people's lives, that's just what it requires. So I love to do that, to dive in with you and really look at shaping the book. And, if you talk to any of our authors, every single one of them, over 40 authors, has said, this book is so much better because I worked with a developmental editor as I was, writing or as I was revising it. And the synergy, there's kind of this magic that happens in this relationship when we're working on the book, that it just transforms into something that's, we're almost in awe of it. It happens almost every single time. And we just kind of look at it like, wow, this is amazing. So that's the developmental stage of it. And again, some people need more than others. And a lot of times it's a matter of rearranging, because I'm a separate set of eyes and I can come in and there's great stuff. A lot of times what happens is what people have at the end of their book, I pull them to the front of the book because it's actually a really great introduction. So it's those kind of things that I know how books work, and so I can help do that. And then once the author and I have agreed that, okay, the book is done, we have all the ideas, it's organized the way we want it to, we have our line editor come in. And what the line editor does is first gives a skim through of the whole book to see if there's anything we've missed. Because, sometimes we've been working for 6 months together, we're in the trenches, we might have missed something. And usually that third set of eyes notices something. And so we might adjust things a little bit. And then once all three of us agree, then that line editor goes through line by line with word choice. Is this the best way to say this? We have all the ideas, but how can we really pull out the beauty of the words? What words can we change? What words can we remove? How can we really remove all obstacles to the reader getting all of this on a deep level? And so that's kind of what the line editor does. And that usually that can take 2 to 4 weeks for the line editor to just go through. And the way that works, which is really great, is the line, depending on what the author wants. Some authors say, fix it, make it however you want it. But a lot of authors, we do suggested edits. The line editor goes through the whole thing, suggested edits, and you as the author then get to go through and accept or reject whatever ones. You're in charge, it's your book, it's your words. These are just ideas and suggestions. And so you get to go through and do that. And then at that point, once you've decided that the book's done, everything's there, I love all the words, everything's the way I want it to be, you sign off on the manuscript, and then we send it to a proofreader who just literally looks for errors in the manuscript. And so that way there's really quite a few stages, right? It takes a lot more than some people realize. And so it's good to understand that, but then you end up with a really professional book that can really help people and can fulfill your vision that you had in the beginning.
Perfect. Thank you, Heather. You're such a
Thank
nice.
you.
And thank you, John, for your nice comment there. John is one of our recently published authors. He spoke at Book to Naples and wrote Simple Strategies, and Heather helped him throughout that process. So you're considered a proper editor, as John said. Thank you, John. Well, we're going to switch gears. I'm going to stop your sharing, Heather, and then I'm
Great.
going to share my screen. Um, let's see. I think I can do it this way. We'll see if I can. Okay, do you see this behind me now? Do you see
Yes,
see
it's
my?
there. I see it.
Okay, perfect. All right. So now that you understand about how to write a book, which is no small task, and if you have successfully completed a manuscript, whether you publish or not, you're in a very, very small percentage of people. But I think what's challenging and what I found challenging with my first book is I had a manuscript and I had no idea what to do with it. So this is what we're going to go through is you've got a manuscript done, you've made that happen. So what do you do now? And this is just a reminder in the email that I just sent this morning that had the link to the Zoom. There's a link to Manuscript Magic and there's a link to Who Me an Author. And both of those are free for you to read. And they give a lot of information detailing what Heather just shared. And also this book will dive into more of the reasons why people publish, which I give in this presentation if it's more extended. But this morning, I'm not going to go through the 10 reasons people want to become an author, generally speaking, when we work with them. So you can dive into those when you read that book. But we're going to talk more at a high level about publishing and what the publishing industry has to offer an aspiring author today. So, of course, you're here because you know me already, probably, or you got this webinar link from somebody else. But these are some of the books that we published since 2019. We have more that we're working on currently. And that's my email if you have any questions that you'd like to send me after this. So this is me back in 2011. My hair looks really weird in this picture, but it's because I think, wow, we changed so much over time. But at that time, I was in my mid 30s and I had written my first book. And this gentleman next to me is David Essel, and he was my life coach mentor that I took courses from. And I was an aspiring life coach. I had a little business, and he also had an all positive XM talk radio show called David Essel Alive. And he reached out to me and asked if I could be a guest producer for his radio show. And I had no idea what that meant. But what I came to find out was that it meant to get the guests who would appear live on his show. And he said, you're a detail-oriented person, you'll do great. Just go ahead. And he was just handed the whole thing off to me. And my job was to book 3 guests per week to appear on his live show, which was 6 to 9 p.m. on Saturday evenings. So this is how I got really well versed in publishing, reaching out to publishing consultants, publishing companies, authors, because it was all positive. And his one requirement for the guests is that they had to have a book. They had to be an author. And so here I was, like this new life coach, thinking about, okay, well, I don't have a book, but if I did have a book, then maybe I could qualify to be on the show, hypothetically speaking, of course. And so I thought to myself that maybe a book is more than just a way to share your ideas. It also can be a way to open doors. And so in 2012, I wrote and released this first book, Ride the Wave, Journey to Peaceful Living. But how I got to the final release of this book is the story that I'm going to give you, the behind the scenes. And you cannot get chapter 1 free anymore at the website. This is an old graphic, so the site has totally changed now. But anyways, there's 2 different routes in the publishing world.
April, your slide there's nothing behind you. At least I'm not seeing anything behind you.
You don't see the traditional publishing and book publishing?
I do not.
I can see it.
Oh,
You
can you?
Red square and the green square?
Awesome. Great. Okay, super.
Okay,
Sorry.
perfect. Okay, so here I was, a newer life coach. I have this manuscript that I wrote, and the only thing I knew was the red box, traditional publishing. I didn't know there was such a thing as independent book publishing at all. So what did I do? I started Googling book publishers. And I took books off of my shelf that I loved, that were self-help, spirituality, those kinds of books. And I looked on their copyright page. Who's the publisher? Because you want to find a publisher that's in alignment with your genre. So if you are a sci-fi fantasy writer, you want to find a publishing company that will do that kind of publishing for you, because they're going to be much more, they're going to have much more support from you. So I found Hay House. Many of you may know Hay House. And I thought, they publish books that are similar to mine, self-help, positive, new agey kind of, that's what I was thinking at the time. And so I went to, coincidentally, a Hay House Writers Workshop, which happened to be in Tampa. And so I thought, oh my God, it's serendipitous. I'm like manifesting all of this. I don't know if I'm like those kind of person, right? But I kind of watched the signs. So I registered for their 8-hour writers workshop, hauled my minivan up to Tampa, went to their convention center. And at the end of the 8-hour workshop, which was hosted by Wayne Dyer, who's now passed it, he published over 60 books with Hay House. Cheryl Richardson, who's one of the best-selling female authors, and Reed Tracy, who's the CEO and still is of Hay House. I learned that you have to have a platform. That was like, they could have just emailed me before I drove my minivan up to Tampa and said, build your platform. And I could have saved myself a whole day. What does that mean? It means how many people know you? Who's, what kind of book sales are you going to bring to our company if we publish you? Because that's what traditional publishing is about. They're going to invest in your project and you, because you are an asset to them. Because you can prove on the front end that you have the weight, the gravitas to sell books on the back end, because they make the majority of the royalties on the back end. So there's always a synergistic relationship between an author and a publisher, and it's a business relationship. And you have to think about it that way. So if you are set on traditional publishing, we're going to go through what that looks like for you to try to achieve that kind of contract, and independent book publishing and what that looks like. So the big 5 publishing houses are HarperCollins, Penguin Random House, Macmillan, Simon Schuster, and Hachette. A lot of them have imprints that are underneath those, of course. And those are, it's so funny. I was just in New York City last weekend, and I got to see the picture in front of the Simon and Schuster building, which just felt like very iconic and very exciting, because so many well-known established authors get published through Simon and Schuster, for example. But here's the steps to get through the doors of that New York City office and get them to pay attention to you. And it's different than independent publishing. So this is what I want you to think about. You're going to write a book proposal. That's totally different than writing your book map and mapping out your ideas, or this is a sales letter, essentially. You can Google or the ChatGPT, how you like to do it, how to do a book proposal. The most important part of the book proposal, in addition to you're going to show, your bio, why are you credible to write it, what are the chapters, what is the summary of the book, you have to sell the idea of the book. What other books, competing titles are out there on the market today selling? Who are those authors? How are you better than them, comparable to them? How are you going to sell your book? This is what a great proposal does, because as a business person, an author is a business person, you have to sell them on the idea of you. Why should you be someone they invest money in? So once you have this book proposal, you're going to look for a literary agent. There's a lot of literary agencies, and you're going to look for a literary agent that's specific for your genre. So this is essentially like a broker or a rep who would work in conjunction with, they're the ones that have the relationship, say with Simon and Schuster or with Reed House. So Simon and Schuster will never accept your manuscript if you mail it in and try to find a contact with Simon and Schuster. That's not how they work. They only work through the filter of literary agents. So once you have that literary agent who believes in you and you've established a relationship with them, they are going to try to sell your manuscript to the various houses, and they are going to take a percentage of what the book is sold for to those publishing houses. So you're going to sell the book and the license of rights to the publishing house, or either an upfront advance where they're going to be super excited that you're coming to them because you have 1 million followers and they know you're going to make money and they want to attract you. So they're going to offer you money up front. And that money up front, the advance, is called against royalties. So let's say you have a huge following, a big platform, and they offer you $50,000 for your manuscript. What that means is once your book is on the market, first $50,000 it earns in royalties, refunds them back for your advance. And then after that advance is earned out, then your royalties will start trickling in at the percentage that's specified. So if that seems kind of overwhelming, don't worry, because it kind of is, and very, very few people qualify for this type of an arrangement. And so I don't say that to discourage you, I say that to empower you, because when I left that writer's workshop, I felt a little discouraged, like, oh my gosh, I spent all this money and I came up to Tampa and I wanted to hand off my manuscripts if someone would like to be popular. But I realized that if you can't get through the door one way, there's always another way to go about it. So there are benefits to traditional publishing, and I'm not knocking it by any stretch. You get an agent partnership, so someone who's representing you, sort of like in the entertainment industry, actors and actresses have agents. So the agent is negotiating on your behalf. You get traditional distribution, which means there will be a sales team of people that are usually 1 year, 12 months in advance, that are going around to the various bookstores and wholesale outlets, retail outlets, to free sell your book, one specific book, to go into those distribution channels like Barnes and Noble and Costco and Walmart, etc. Independent publishing does not have that. We don't do large prevalence and have those sales teams out on the ground. So that is a benefit of traditional publishing. It's a question I get asked often. It's like, is my book going to be printed? Traditional publishing is generally the way to get that. However, working with an independent publisher, you can still get your book into Barnes and Noble, but it's a little bit more work. But your ISBN and your metadata it's technically allowed to be in there for sure. And there's more potential opportunities, which, may come about because of traditional publishing. So independent book publishing is where O'Leary Publishing fits in. There are some other companies as well. These are just some that I mentioned that are similar in nature to ours. Page 2, Legacy Launchpad, Balboa, which is Hay House's independent publishing arm. So essentially those people who don't qualify for that traditional publishing arrangement, they sort of siphon them over into the Balboa Press, Outskirts Press. There's many more. But you will get what you pay for. And let me just say that's true across the board with anything. And there's different steps to getting to this arrangement. So step 1 is have an idea, like Heather was talking about earlier. Is your idea educational? Is it inspiring? Is it entertaining? What is the idea? How is the reader going to benefit by reading your book? Then you're going to choose a publishing team. So whether you choose a company to work with, you interview different independent publishers, or you decide to go it alone and try to siphon that help yourself, that's up to you. And then you're going to strategically work on getting that book launched and having some support on the back end once you get your book launched. So the benefits of independent publishing is direct partnership. So you don't have to have an agent to represent you. You get to work directly with the publisher. And that, I think, is a huge benefit in a lot of ways, because it streamlines the process and you get to know the people you're working with very well. So in the case of the books we publish, as Heather said, she is in the trenches with an author from the start to the launch of their book. You come in contact with a lot of other people on our team, and it's a one-to-one interaction. So you get feedback, you get support, encouragement, customized execution of your book launch, etc., based on your vision and your goals. Quicker publication, and this is largely because we don't have a traditional distribution. So print on demand distribution means that when someone orders your book, it's printed and shipped from the distributor. So we work with Ingram, which is Lightning Source. That's what the traditional publishers work with as well. The main difference is in traditional, they're doing a large print run of books, let's say 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 books because they've pre-sold it through their sales team and they're distributing it to the wholesale market. We don't have that sort of commitment because we don't know if our authors are going to be able to sell their books or how much. And we don't want our authors to invest in a 10,000 book print run without proving that they can really sell it first. And so it's sort of like, don't put the horse before the cart. Let's start off very conservatively. Let's use the print on demand model where you don't have a huge book print investment and you don't have the potential for returns, which can be a nightmare. And then as your book sales grow, it may work to where it makes sense to switch into doing a large print run. But that's something that's discussed a little later on down the line. And greater opportunities, I think it's a greater opportunity because we really help you think holistically about the big picture of your book publishing. So how is this book going to be the center of your ecosystem of products, services, speaking platform? What are the things that you want the book to do for you? What doors is it opening for you? How are you helping people on a greater scale? And how can we help you bake that into the book? Sort of like Heather was talking about, invitation being the back cover copy. The invitation in the marketing sense is that piece of the puzzle in your book where we get people from the pages of your book into your digital hand. So what are those things that you're going to do to build that audience of people? And I would like to also mention that it's a fluid relationship. So I know people who have had a traditional publisher and then they decided to go to independent publishing for some of their books because maybe just because they got a traditional deal on one book doesn't mean that all their books are going to be appealing to the traditional publisher. So maybe they pitched another idea, a second, a third, or fourth, and they didn't like that idea. But the author liked it well enough that they switched over to independent publishing. So you can move seamlessly between the two. You don't have to commit to one or another. So a lot of times independent publishing for the new and aspiring author is the best start because you want to start getting your audience built. Once your audience is built, once you've really established your brand and the numbers behind your sales and what you're doing and your social media followings, the door to traditional publishing might open much easier because a literary agent's going to be more interested in working with you. So this is what Heather covered earlier. The idea to manuscript is step one. You got to take your idea out of your head and get it written into a manuscript. There's no two ways around this. It seems very obvious, but there's so many people I know who hear, you should write a book. You have an amazing story. Wow, you're so inspiring. And it feels good to hear those words, but to actually take the encouragement or the things you've heard from other people and sit down and actually get into manuscript is an entirely different process. And then from the manuscript to the book, and I can tell you with complete certainty that if you choose to do this on your own, you will be very, very disappointed. I have seen so many poorly published, self-published books from people who, it's easy to get paper bound and glued into a spine with a cover on it. So it's not the technical aspect of having two files and uploading them into, like Amazon self-publishing thing, KDP, and getting it out. What matters is when somebody gets that book, how does it feel? What does it look like? There are very high standards for independent publishing that are as standard as traditional publishing. And if you don't know that criteria, your book is going to represent you very poorly. And so I say this because I was a book judge for the Benjamin Franklin Book Awards. That is an annual book awards put out by the Independent Book Publishers Association, which I'm a member of. And I did that job as a volunteer for a number of years because I really wanted to learn how to publish an excellent book. And the amount of books that I saw that did not meet the highest level standard was astounding. So I would say that it's in your best interest to work with someone who understands what are all the pieces of the puzzle. I'll just give you for example. If you have a self-published book and the ISBN number has 9,000 on it, or if you look at a book and you see that it says 9,000 and there's not an actual number or price, that's red flag that it's a self-published book. And it's a huge mistake that a lot of self-published authors make. So my advice is to work with someone who really knows what they're doing. And then the book launch is essential. Planning your book launch, being strategic about it, getting people excited about it, doing one in person, doing one online, doing podcast tours, doing media appearances, or speaking on a stage. We offer the Book Naples event for our speakers, for our authors to be on a speaker platform in front of a few hundred people, because it's important to really sharpen those skills to getting the word out. You will always be the best voice for your book. No publisher on the planet is going to do what you can do for your book. So whatever your book sales are is a direct representation of how strong your network is and how well you're marketing your book. Don't have any illusions about that. That is the case. So really, it's really about defining what does success look like for you, and then how do you get there? So is your book really just a legacy tool? You had an amazing life. You want your grandkids to know what it was about, and your great great grandkids. That's great. We're not here to define what success is. We're here to help you define it for yourself and then help you get there. If your book is a tool to help you get more speaking and paid speaking gigs, then let's try to do that. If it's part of a workshop or a series of workshops or seminars or classes that you're going to teach in person or online, how can that book facilitate filling those workshops and classes? So this is up to you to decide, and for us to help you plan that strategy to get there. So you get to control your work and you get to define your journey. It's not only about book sales. It's not about traditional distribution. It's about getting your voice out there, and it's about using that voice to build your platform, and then learning how to swing between independent and traditional if that's what you decide to do. It's learning how to grow your platform, to grow your voice, to grow your business. And that is something that we're here to facilitate. These are some of our authors. Don Fedor, who's done 2 books with us. He's on the top left corner there. He was a former professor at Georgia Tech and had a book published by Stanford Press in the 2000s on organizational behavior, but he always had this spiritual side to him, which in academia he wasn't forthcoming with. So once he retired, he decided to really come forward with his spiritual journey. And he published with us Awaken to Unconditional Love and The Ultimate Quest. He's working on another one with us as well. You can see him in the middle there at Paul Arciero, who Heather mentioned earlier, is on the left and the center there for the Prize Life. Kendra flew out from Las Vegas for this event. Roberta flew in from Ohio. Devon, there, second from the right, flew in from California. And Tim flew in from North Carolina. So we have authors from all over the US who come to be a part of our event that we host once a year in Naples. Joy did our only children's picture book so far. Heather mentioned Poppy, the Awesome Possum series. Those are children's chapter books. We love our authors, no matter what they decide to publish. And then Stacy there on the bottom received an award at our last event in 2023. 2024? 2023. I don't know. Years are mixed up. So we love to recognize our authors as well. So I would love to give you a chance here. If you want to schedule a consultation, if you have your phone, if you're looking on your computer, you can scan this. Forget the Come to Book Naples. I didn't update that slide here. But you can always talk to us and help you get your journey organized in your head. Even if it's something that you plan to do, I think it's always good to take the next right step. So let me stop sharing here. And Heather, we've got some questions to address from some of you who are on that have submitted some. Do you want to address one of them, Heather, first?
Yes, I'd be glad to. Which am I looking in the email, or am I looking? Is that what I'm looking at, the email?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Let me get back to that.
I'll ask you one. So it says, let's see. I have a fairly clear concept in many pages of notes. What's the best or next step towards writing the book?
Well, what's your message? What's your vision? Who's your reader? Table of contents, back cover, copy. I mean, that's really what I would say is, and sometimes that's really good. Write a bunch of stuff and then you can pull those pieces out, what your message is, you know, what your vision for it is, who your reader is, and kind of what your table of contents looks like. So it's great to do that and then use that to create these steps that we talked about today.
Perfect. Someone asked, what's the best way to keep everything together? How long
Well,
does it?
yeah, we love Google Docs. That's the way we do it. We do it in Google Docs, and you can create a folder, and then you can have different, you know, documents, and different people can work on them all together. That's what we really love. So that's how I would do it. Because the cool thing about that is you can actually even access that on your phone. It's not as effective on your phone, but you can do it on your computer, your iPad, your phone. You can access and look at everything, and so it makes it really user friendly. That's what I would say. I don't know, April, if you have anything to add to that.
No, I think always thinking about organization is key. We have a folder system that we use for all of our authors. And like Heather said, we share through Google Drive, but we have certain subcategories of folders that we use because there's a lot of details in publishing. And it's important that it's like, you don't want it just to turn into a big junk drawer where you can't find anything. So, you know, have subfolders for different things. And sometimes what Heather does is she has different documents for different chapters if the book is long, and that way she can get to them easier. And then she puts them all into one long document at the end. So not always, but would you want to mention about that? And
Yeah, that definitely helps. And also we do that sometimes too, because like if we have a 100,000 word book, which is really long, that's like 500 pages. We sometimes will have 3 line editors working on it at the same time. So we'll break it into 3 pieces. And so if it's really long, that's one way to do that. But the organizational piece, I mean, I would say again, that's why it goes back to having a team and people who know what they're doing, because then it takes all that off of your plate. You don't have to organize most of that. We organize most of that for you, personally. And how long does it take? I think you mean in terms of writing. I mean, I can give you kind of our general goal is for the developmental process to be 3 to 4 months. That's a general goal. Sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's longer. And then the editing is a couple of months, and then the design is a couple of months. So, you know, we're usually talking around 9 months, which is really quick compared to most, you know, traditional publishers. It takes years. But we can do a book in sometimes 6 months. 9 months is kind of probably our average. Sometimes it's more like a year, but that's kind of, when you say April, that's kind of our ballpark, what we're working with, which is really incredible and impressive, actually, that we have someone who comes to Book Naples last year and is speaking on the stage this year with their book done. Like within less than a year, their book was done. That we are so proud of that.
Yes, we are proud of that. Someone asked advice on how to best promote the book once it's available. I'll speak to that. That is really a good question because that's the most challenging part, I'd say, for most authors. Most authors are creatives by nature. We're inspired by writing. We like the idea of, you know, working with people on the back end, but then once you have to like put on the sales hat, it's like, oh my God. So I think that can be the challenge is looking at yourself as a business person. So yes, you're creative. It's like someone who's a musician. They can spend all day in their studio perfecting their guitar licks, but unless they're going to go out to all the local clubs and, you know, get themselves booked, they're going to stay in their studio forever without anyone hearing them. So I think the biggest thing is to think through, what do I feel are my strong skills? So for example, if you love interviewing, consider doing a podcast book tour, consider speaking to local groups. If you hate that, then think about, maybe I can blog, be a guest blogger on various sites or media sites. If you are someone who likes to throw events and parties, do book parties, go have different friends or businesses host you for book signings. So there's no one right or wrong way to promote your book. I think the biggest thing is, don't look at it as a book launch. Like, here's my launch. You can do great on your launch. We help a lot of our authors do really, really well during their launch. But if you don't have a marketing plan to keep that going for at least 12 months, your book is going to spike and then it's going to decline. So what is that? And you don't have to necessarily have all the answers yourself. We have a PR media gal, Sue, who some of our authors work with. I have a podcast author booking tour gal, Michelle, who is excellent at what she does and can book people on podcasts. Or if you have the time, you can learn some of those skills yourself. But I would say have a commitment. It's like, having the baby, the book baby. It's like I'm in the hospital birthing my baby. Now you've got your baby and it's screaming and you're bringing it home. Now you've got to change its diaper and feed it and get up in the middle of the night with it and all those things. The book requires the same kind of attention. So I would say that's the key. And there's a couple questions on costs associated with publishing. So without kind of getting into the weeds of our costs on publishing, I would say that depending on what you choose, traditional publishing, obviously they're going to fund your project and then they're going to make the royalties. If you're going to invest in your project, as an independent publisher, we work based on a project price and then editorials billed separate. So editorial fees are variable because a book of 30,000 words is going to need a lot less work than a book that's 100,000 words, as Heather mentioned. So, your costs associated with publishing a book go up the longer your book is. And there's just no two ways around that. So I would look at when you're researching independent publishing, if you decide to go that route, look at the package price, and say, what's included with this? What am I expecting to pay a la carte? What support am I getting? Is this a high volume independent publisher? Because generally high volume publishers will have a lower price, but they're going to also have less involvement with you. And that's just the truth, because how can they manage 1,000 book projects and really give you time and attention? So you want to ask how much interaction you're going to have with your editor specifically, and what things you don't want to contract with someone and then realize that, oh, I paid a low upfront cost, but then everything I need to get my book done, it's like now there's all these additional charges. So we kind of bundle ours into one thing, and then the editorial is the flexible piece of the puzzle. So we have a couple minutes left. Is there anyone who has questions that we did not cover? Go ahead, Ellie. You can unmute.
Hi, April. Hi, Heather. That was immensely helpful. So thank you. I am beginning to write a very, very short book. I think of it as kind of a resource guide under 100 pages. And I wanted to ask if that's something that you've done and or are interested in, potentially.
Thank you for the question. So yes, we are always interested in talking to aspiring authors. One thing that I would say we're really good at is being honest about whether we can and would like to help you, whether we're the best fit for you and you're the best fit for us. So having a consultation, if you would like to send Kristen an email, Kristin at O'Leary Publishing. She'll send you a link for a private publishing consultation, and then you and I can talk privately about that.
Okay, great. Thanks, April.
Anyone else have a question? Thanks, Kristen. She put that in the chat for you.
Hello there.
Hi, Denise.
How are you? This was a great, great session today. I've written about 250 pages and I have a lot of chapters and outlines and this and that, but it's not as organized as it needs to be. Are you able to help me with that as well if I go, try to go forward with you all?
That is my superpower.
Oh, goody.
Yep, that's what I'm really good at. Yep. I love it. I absolutely love organizing. So yeah, I'm really good at that.
Okay, because I'm like, I literally am done with maybe 250 or more pages. And I'm like, I do have chapters, I do have outlines, but there's like several of them and there's several sections and, it's a lot. And I just feel like overwhelmed. And one other thing is I'm at the point where I need to add more anecdotes and I'm struggling with that a little, do you also help with that?
That's what developmental editing is. Like that's exactly what we do. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So
perfect. And thank you. Yeah, Denise. So that's exactly what we do. And there's two ways to go about that, as Heather was mentioning at the end of her portion. A manuscript review is where it's just a contract, it's just an out of contract service. So it's something you can look up on our services page. Maybe Kristen could put the link to our services page in the chat there, but that's where Heather would read your whole manuscript and give you all of that developmental feedback. And then you can decide, do you want to move forward to contract? Do you want to make those adjustments yourself? Do you need help with it, etc.? Or for those who know that they want to publish with us, and they contract, then that would be the first step in your editorial journey. So you don't have to kind of pay for that twice. It would be included with your package. So, there's two ways to go about it, really.
That is awesome. And then one other question, is this confidential? Like, do you sign an agreement that this won't go anywhere else?
I'm not sure what you mean by that. So
So by me handing over my manuscript to you, is that confidential?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
But like if you publish it, the whole world will know what's in it. So that's
Of
what we were confused
course.
about. Like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
if you're public-
we're not looking to steal your work or anything.
Right.
So
No,
yeah,
I mean, I've patented something in the past and we always had to sign an agreement. So I was just going by that,
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I've never really thought of that. We're not, we're too busy to be stealing people's work and trying to do anything with it. Like the
And
authors
not to imply that you would steal it, but
Yeah.
just for more of a security perspective,
Yeah, of course.
like insecurity about it,
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, we're very careful with our authors and with their work. Yeah, we're very
Right.
careful.
So how do I get that to you sort of as soon as possible in the next few weeks or
if
so?
if you can send Kristen, so she put her email in the chat. Kristen did, KRISTIN @o'learypublishing.com. She will help get you either to a publishing consultation. She'll steer you to the book mapping page. She'll answer any questions you have. Kristen runs all of our back-end operations. She is the point person for all of our projects. So she is, the brains behind the operations part of our business. So, well, I'm going to end here because I want to respect everyone's time and just thank you for being a part of this morning. This was really excellent to have so many good questions, and we appreciate your time to spend it with us. And if we can be of further help to you, we would love to do so. Heather, any final question or any final thoughts here?
Love to work with you all. We love what we do. We have fun too.
And Jade, we're excited to work with you.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
All right. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you so much.